Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here. Welcome to part 1 of my beginner's guide to stacking precious metals. This is a video series I've been wanting to make for quite a while now, and I've been spurred on by the upsurge in people who have been asking me questions through the Silver Forum, through YouTube and through other social media, just for a bit of advice on stacking precious metals and buying gold and silver. So I thought I'd put together kind of my thoughts and opinions in video form, because I can appreciate it's a really daunting prospect, the whole world of investing in precious metals and buying gold and silver. So I thought I'd get my thoughts and opinions down. Do remember, it is just my thoughts and opinions though. I am just a dude who likes to buy really shiny things made of gold and silver. I'm not a financial planner, I'm not a financial expert, I'm certainly not an investment guru. So any decisions that you make having watched this video or any others, they need to be yours and yours alone. I am not responsible for any financial decisions that you make. So with that disclaimer out the way, as I said, it is a complete beginner's guide. I'm going to talk about anything and everything from what precious metals actually are, the different types, how to choose, how to invest, the different types of things that you can invest in. So this first video is going to kind of cover those areas. So you more experienced and seasoned stackers out there, you're probably going to know a lot about what I'm talking about. But that doesn't stop you commenting. You know, that's how I look to learn in the whole world of precious metals, so please do comment. Also, I know that a lot of the beginners will watch the comment section as well, and they'll learn from there, so do let me know if you think that I'm saying something which isn't quite right. That's how everybody learns. So with that in mind, let's jump straight into the first topic which I want to talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is actually what are the precious metals out there and why are they actually inherently valuable in the first place. So everybody's heard of gold and silver, you would imagine, but there's also precious metals like copper, platinum. Those are the other two that you've probably heard of in the past as well. And then I don't actually have any to show you, but there's also platinum. Well, actually the only platinum I have is my wedding ring. So, you know, there's platinum, and there's also palladium and there's rhodium. Those metals are probably not so common in the world of investing, but they have also been used in jewellery quite commonly. You hear a lot of platinum jewellery, palladium jewellery, and also just generally in the world of investing. But the most common ones are silver and gold, and those are the ones that as a beginner you should probably look at because they're the most easy to buy and sell, and that's very important. Now, as to why these metals are inherently precious, and I think throughout history it's evident that gold and silver have been so vastly sought after, and I think it's important to ask yourself why. Gold and silver are very shiny, and now that seems really stupid and simple to say, but it's actually pretty true. Shiny, they are desirable. Gold and silver is a desirable product. It's a very durable metal. It'll last for centuries and it will not really change. Silver tarnishes over time a little bit, but gold especially will pretty much stay the same if you keep it in a sock drawer somewhere. It will look the same in 200-300 years time. And you see this in coins which have been dug up in archaeological sites. Once they've been cleaned up, they look like they're brand new. And that's a really important thing for kingdoms of old and countries of old that used to have gold and silver reserves. Their economy was built on gold and silver, their currency was linked to it. It was called the gold standard. It used to be relatively common 100 years ago, but many countries now have moved away from that, and we'll talk about why that's important later as well. But it's been such a commonly desired thing for currencies throughout history that it has got that desirability factor, and it's linked to the kind of value of currency. It's also very malleable. It's got some unique scientific properties, so you can manufacture various different things out of gold and silver. In history it was obviously made into jewellery, into coins and things like that. But now in the modern age you can transform silver into any kind of designs, hand-poured silver especially, and we'll talk about that later as well. But in terms of industrial properties, gold and silver have fantastic properties. They are incredibly good conductors of electricity and heat. You see gold and silver in electronic components for computers, mobile phones, and all of these types of things in the modern world, and they've got many different industrial uses. Even platinum's got industrial uses in catalytic converters for cars. So you can see that they are very desirable even now in the modern age, even though they don't necessarily have the same draw from kind of the gold standard era of currencies and governments backing them. So that's kind of an overview of gold and silver. Let's now move on to point number 2. the second thing I want to talk about is the why and how of investing in precious metals. And I think the why is a really important point that you need to consider very early on in your stacking or investing. It's just something that you should define in your mind why you're doing this. Are you doing this on a short-term basis or a long-term basis or a medium-term? You need to have in your mind what defines short-term for you. Are you looking at buying something and then flipping it within 2 weeks, making some money? Very high-risk strategy, but it works for some people. Or are you planning for your pension, or are you planning to hand this down to your children and grandchildren as an inheritance? So you need to have in your mind why you're doing this in the first place, so that you've got a good idea of what to expect over time and how to plan your investments. Now, I appreciate as well that things will change over time. People, life just changes all the time, and people's goals will change. So it's important to remember that once you've defined, the certain goals that you want out of these things, that they might change, and they probably will change. And I've changed my goals and opinions on why I'm investing in precious metals in the first place over time. So it happens, and it's important to evolve as you do it as well. The second point here is how to invest in precious metals, and there's really only kind of two options really. There's the first, which is buying physical gold and silver like we've got here, so you can see it, you hold it, it's in your own hands, you store it yourself in your house, your safe, your safety deposit box, wherever it may be. Or you buy it digitally and you have an account with a bullion vault, or a bullion dealer who holds it for you on account, and then when you're ready to sell you get your money back and so on. Now in my opinion, I think physical is always the way to go. Holding it is just the most important thing, because if an institution goes bust, bankrupt, dies, or if they're untrustworthy and they run off with your money, you can't get your gold and silver back. So physical is probably the way to go, but for some people it might well be going in digital. There are advantages of digital storage. You often potentially get cheaper prices for your gold. You often don't have to pay for any postage charges. Sometimes you'll have to pay for vault charges, but you won't necessarily pay as much as compared to postage. And also you don't have to store it yourself, so it's safe, it's secure somewhere else. If someone breaks into your house, you're not worried about them stealing your stack. So there are advantages, so it's something to consider for both sides of things. So now on to point number 3. Okay, so point number 3 is all about budgeting, and I think this is probably the single most important decision that you can make around your investment, about your stack at all, period. It is the most important thing. Budgeting is so important. One of the biggest pitfalls in stacking precious metals is having to sell them. And I know that sounds funny, but because you are aiming to sell them at one day, and we'll talk about setting goals and exit strategies probably later on in another video. But making sure that when you're buying these precious metals, if you set yourself that long-term goal of buying them, or that medium-term goal, 4 or 5 years or whatever it might be, not having to sell them before that is so important. When you're buying silver and gold, the prices will fluctuate. They'll go up and down. That's the nature of the market. It is a volatile market. It will go up and down throughout the months and years. So picking the time that you sell is so important in getting a return on your investment. And whilst you can't predict what the markets are going to be like in 30 years' time, you'll have the flexibility to choose what's going to happen when you get to sell. Now, if you're forced to sell earlier on because perhaps you've not budgeted properly and you've got your car's broken down or your boiler's broken and you don't have enough money to replace it, then having to cash in your gold and silver early at a time which might not be best for you is going to kill your investment. It's going to potentially ruin your stack. You're also having to sell at a time which is not necessarily beneficial for you, so you don't have as much buying power from choosing a person to sell it to, so you can't wait to get the better price. You have to go to whatever dealer is going to offer you the price that you want now. So that's when you're going to potentially lose money. And I've seen and heard many different stories of different people who have had to sell their stuff to buy boilers or cars, and then they've basically lost a lot of money in the long run of their investment. And that's a sad state of affairs, and that's not something that I think anybody wants to have. So following on from point 2, once you've defined your kind of parameters, put that budget in place so that you know how much you're going to be buying each month, each week, each year, however often it's going to be for you, and make sure that you've got that kind of backup rainy day fund. This stuff, if it's a long-term investment, should be seen as a long-term savings account, should be seen like a pension account or something that you can't touch until you get to that stage in life where you need to. You know, it's always nice to have it though as a safety net in case you ever did need to cash in everything and get all the money, but be aware that you might well lose out if you have to do that. So budget is the most important thing. Make sure that you plan ahead so that you've got the cash available for everyday stuff and that you have enough money for those emergency situations as well. On now to point number 4. So the last point I want to talk about is how to choose which metal that you actually want to invest in. It's going to be different for everybody, and I'm afraid there's no single one answer to say you should invest in gold or silver. It's going to come down to kind of points 2 and 3 as well, about what your circumstances are, why you're investing in precious metals, what your strategy is, and also what your budget is to a certain extent as well. Silver and gold have traditionally been seen as a slightly more risky investment than perhaps stocks and shares over the short term, but in a long term they are seen as quite safe haven investments, so that's something to consider. So if you're on a short term strategy, perhaps it's wise to go into silver. Perhaps it's more volatile than gold, it'll have bigger fluctuations in prices. But if you're on the long term side of things and you just want to hedge your purchasing power against the currency, then perhaps gold is the way forward. So there's many different things to consider like that. Budget is also important as well. If you're on a short budget and you're only wanting to buy one coin a month, one silver coin a month, then that's fine. But if you can still purchase gold on a short budget. Some people think that they can't, but you just have to save up for a few months and make that purchase instead of every month, every 6 months. I think as well, if you're on a very big budget, it's important to think about what the long-term implications are. If you're stacking 100 ounces of silver every month for 30 years, you're going to end up with tens of thousands of ounces of silver, and that's going to be very difficult to store. It's going to weigh an absolute ton. If you move house, how are you going to move it? If you've got 300, 400 kilograms of silver or more, how are you physically going to move it? It's going to be very difficult. Whereas if you've got that equivalent value of gold, it's going to weigh considerably less, 70 times less at the moment in terms of the gold-silver ratio. So it's worth thinking about that. There are advantages over silver compared with gold, and similarly with gold over silver. So I've talked a little bit about the silver. You can buy one coin a month as opposed to waiting for gold. But for silver, certainly here in the UK, you have to pay VAT on your silver purchases. So it's going to be more expensive in terms of premiums. You're going to pay more. Certainly in the UK, you're paying VAT, which is 20% sales tax, which is loads, proper killer. So you perhaps have to go to Europe and buy from Europe, which means you have to pay for international shipping. So you are going to pay less premium on gold compared with silver. So that's something to definitely think about as well. So that about wraps it up for part 1. I will talk about other different topics as we go forward in the series, so make sure that you hit that subscribe button to catch future episodes. If there are any topics that you would specifically like me to talk about or things that you've got questions about, then please comment in this video. And if you're a seasoned investor or stacker and you've heard things that I've talked about that perhaps you either don't agree with or that you agree with, then do comment on this video as well. Constructive feedback is great for me. That's how I learn. It's also how other people learn as well. They'll read the comments and they'll learn from those. So make sure that you comment on this video, please. If you like the video, please hit that thumbs up button. That would be fantastic. And as I said, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. And if you could also hit that alarm bell, that would be fantastic, because then you'll get a notification whenever I upload a video. For example, on Friday, you'll get a notification about the In Focus Friday episode on this lovely 10.43 ounce Star Metals bar, and talk all about the history of that bar, and that's one not to miss. And other things, I've got a really, really cool unboxing going up on the weekend, all the way from Australia. It's a really great one, really one not to miss. And also we've got updates on my hand-poured silver as well. Otherwise, I just want to say a massive thank you for everybody for watching, and please make sure that you like, share, comment and subscribe for more.